Hey everyone, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames. This is a pre-release beta for Hollow Knight on the PC. I was provided with a free download code for the game, and even though I don't normally beta test games or buy games in early access or anything like that, I decided to take a look at it. As far as I know, it's not available for general release. Basically, it's a limited beta. I got a key for it, so I decided to take a look at it. Just full disclosure, the key was given to me for free, although the game is not complete. It's version 0.75b, and again, it's not in release form, so I'm giving it kind of a first impressions, Fox first set, and seeing how I feel about the game. My immediate impressions of the game were pretty good upon launching. It went straight to 1920 by 1080. I didn't have to go in there and fix it. You know, a lot of games when you launch them, they launch at like 720p or some weird resolution. They mess up your monitor, switch things out, or they have a problem if you have two monitors. I have a dual monitor setup, and Hollow Knight was able to handle that just fine. It launched at the set resolution for my main monitor, which was awesome, and it also ran at 144 frames per second, which is the maximum that my monitor can reasonably run at if, you know, you got like a VSync or something set to it. I have G-Sync, so I'm assuming that's what was going on, although I don't know if there's forced G-Sync, or I'm sorry, VSync in the game. G-Sync is kind of like a VSync solution that works with the monitor and the graphics card for the NVIDIA side of things, the equivalent being AMD's FreeSync. So it matched my monitor's refresh rate. Now, I must say that I had an issue later. I'll get to that in a moment. The options menu is absolutely bare bones. There's virtually nothing in it. So, nothing there yet. But again, it's in beta form, so we don't know what's going to be out in the end. There's not too much I can do in terms of a review, but I did decide to look at it just because it was I was asked to take a look at it and given a free copy. The game successfully recovered from an Alt-Tab, which is really nice, but for some reason when I came back the gamepad wasn't recognized, and this is the biggest issue I have with the demo. Let me just give one of the only real negative things I'm going to say about it. I had a lot of problems with using a controller. I don't really feel like these games are best played with the mouse and keyboard. There are controls for that, but for me, you know, it's a platformer. It's along the veins of something like Salt and Sanctuary, another game that's in beta or early access right now. Almost like a game like Super Meat Boy, something like that. Not the exact same thing. Maybe Guacamelee is a better example. One of your 2D, you maybe could call it like a Metroidvania style, even though that would require that it be a Castlevania. But it's a Metroid style game. It has a dark atmosphere, aesthetic. There's some interesting mechanics in there, and you could almost sort of link it to Dark Souls in a little bit, and I'll show you why. But the controller issue. When I used my Xbox 360 controller, which worked fine with everything else, it's wireless Xbox 360 controller for Windows, with all, you know, it's first party, everything's first party, including the receiver. Anytime I would accidentally or intentionally move the left analog stick, the character would often get stuck moving to the left, and I would have to push on the D-pad several times to get that to stop. So I had to use the D-pad. I could not use the left analog stick for movement, even though clearly the game was designed to do that as well as use the D-pad. Now I decided to test it out with a different controller, so I hooked up my Xbox One controller with a micro USB cable because the wireless solution is not out yet. The game got stuck with me moving to the left endlessly. There's nothing I could do short of unplugging the controller to get it to stop. And then, for some reason, the game ran at a really, really low frame rate and it was completely unplayable. Probably something to do with my G-Sync monitor. I don't think that's probably an issue with everyone who runs the game. It was probably some sort of G-Sync thing. Although I haven't really changed anything, so I'm not sure why it launched that way. But again, it's all in beta. Now, as for my impressions of the game, I gotta say, number one is, I like the aesthetic. It's sort of this dark, interesting, almost like an H.R. Giger meets Edward Scissorhands, almost like the kind of... H.R. Giger, by the way, is the guy that designed the aliens for the Alien series, the Alien movie. It's got that kind of feel to it, this sort of like gross bug-looking aesthetic, like the things in the background almost look like beetles with shells or something, and there are enemies in the game that are like bugs, little slug things, little beetle things. And then you combine that with like this cartoony aesthetic to it. So it's not all dark and gritty, it's got like an almost cartoon aesthetic to it. Then when you die, what's really interesting is you leave behind this sort of like hollow version of yourself, and you can see where we're getting to the Dark Souls aspect of it. When you return, I didn't realize this, I tried to collect that hollow version of myself that I left there to get all the items and whatnot that I dropped. Well, I was damaged. Apparently, you have to do a little battle with this thing when you return. So in order to get the stuff that you dropped when you died, you actually have to do battle and defeat the kind of hollow version of yourself. I don't know if I'm using the right phrase, but that was a very interesting mechanic, and I thought that was kind of cool. And that is something that I maybe think From Software should steal in one of the future Souls games, where instead of just returning to pick up your bloodstain or pick up your souls, maybe you have to fight a dark version of yourself to get it back. That would be kind of cool. A little challenge there that adds some insult to injury when you die and lose your stuff. Now, there were a lot of things I liked about the game. Not only the aesthetic, the graphics, and how that looked, and it performed admirably, except for that one time I launched it when it was acting all funny. Not only that, super smooth, looks great, has nice little effects and all that, runs great, but the music and the sound effects are really good. I was impressed because when you hit stuff, it really has this big oomph to it. Like, there's some really good feel behind it. You know when you play like a first-person shooter and you're shooting guns and things like that, and you're like, yeah, this doesn't really have much of a good feel to it. It's like, I feel like I'm shooting I'm firing off a pea shooter. There's nothing behind it. This is like one of those games where you really feel the attacks. When you hit things, when things hit you and you bounce back, and the effects that it makes, they're really deep, and if you wear a good pair of headphones, it's got some serious bass to it. So the sound effects are awesome, and in many cases, a game can really be made a lot better by having good sound effects, good sound design. That was something I praised in BioShock Infinite, my review of that game. It's something we oftentimes ignore. Oh, well, sound effects, who cares about sound effects, right? We just talk about music and gameplay and graphics, but, I mean, guys, the sound effects in this game are incredible. They're just so rich and they're deep, and that's not something I would expect from a company that, as far as I know, hasn't made a ton of other stuff. You know, this is like a little indie game that you wouldn't expect to have that level of polish to it. One little minor gripe that I had is when I encountered this sort of mini-boss or boss character in the game, I felt like I barely had enough reach with my attack in order to really hit it and dodge his attack, so I felt like I was just barely jumping in far enough to kind of make a quick swipe and then quickly jumping out. It was almost as if I felt like it wasn't quite balanced. But for the most part, you can do whatever you need to do in the game in terms of attacking. You can attack up, you can attack downward while falling. Not a plunge attack, but you can just swipe downward. You can swipe left and right. The controls are amazing. They're really good, other than the fact that I had that little issue with the analog stick and my Xbox One controller refusing to work at all. I didn't try the keyboard and mouse controls much, just that they're there. But again, for a game like this, I really am all about the gamepad. And again, my overall impressions were very good, and I was surprised because I thought I would just play it a little bit and be like, yeah, it's okay, and then I'd walk away from it. But really, it left a lasting impression. I do want to play it more. I did not complete it. I don't know how long it is, and the reason I didn't complete it is not only because, I don't have a lot of time. Just this week alone, I've worked 40 hours of overtime. It is because I kind of want to wait until the game is finished. I feel like I don't know if I can finish the entire game in its beta state. If I do, well, I want to go back and finish it when it's done, and I really want to play it when it's done, when it's totally polished, when it has all the graphics options, when it has everything included, all the mechanics, it's completely set up the way the developer wants it, and then they can kind of release it and be like, my masterpiece is finished, even though you never feel like your masterpiece is finished. But I want the developer to say, this I feel like is version 1.0, and I'll play that. So I did get a really good impression of it. I will keep this in mind. I'm definitely going to pick it up at some point when it releases on Steam. Will I buy it at full price? Well, it depends on the price of the game. I'm really stingy. I'm cheap with buying games. I typically buy most of my games at $10 or less. But if this one releases at, like, say $20, I wouldn't have many qualms about picking it up at that price. I might wait until it goes at half price, but I thought it was pretty good. I was impressed by the level of polish and the detail to it, that it had some interesting mechanics. I know you can get items and whatnot, and you can get other things in the game that I never got around to getting. I never got that far into it. But as a Fox First Scent, this is all about getting that first scent of the game and, playing on the idea that I'm a fox. I'm a fox in real life too, guys. No, I'm not. Hollow Knight, the beta, I was impressed far more than I thought I'd be, and it is one I'm going to keep an eye on. If you like these sorts of games, these 2D action platformers that have these interesting little quirks and mechanics and unique aesthetic, kind of like Guacamelee did, this is definitely a game you should look out for. If you liked Guacamelee, definitely look at this one. I can't imagine you wouldn't like this one. If you like the old school 2D Metroid games, again, you'll probably like Hollow Knight. If you don't like the aesthetic, you could still give it a shot. I don't know if there'll be a demo or not. I don't know. Demos have sort of fallen to the wayside with PC gaming, unfortunately. I love being able to play lots of demos on the PC. But that's an aside. Basically, my impressions were good, guys. My first scent, it's very positive. I like the way Hollow Knight smells. And I'm Fox with FoxeoGames. If you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You can do either one. Make sure to follow me here if you haven't already. Subscribe. There's a Twitter link. I love Twitter. I love keeping up with you guys on Twitter. And I also have a Let's Play channel called FoxeoGames. All those links are in the description. And I will see you guys next time.